I've been a night guard for a few years now. I've worked in some quiet places, warehouses, small office buildings, factories. You name it. Most of the time, it's just me, the darkness, and the hum of machines in the background. So, when I saw an ad for a night shift at Sinclair Factory, I thought it'd be the same as usual. Just another lonely night and another paycheck. But this place had its own secrets. Ones I would have never believed if I hadn't experienced them myself. The ad was simple. Night guard needed. Sinclair Factory. $25 per hour. Immediate start. That last part, immediate start, was a bit strange. They wanted someone to begin right away, no questions asked. But the pay was too good to ignore. So I applied. I got a call back within the hour. No interview, no questions. Just a quiet voice on the other end asking, "Can you start tonight?" I said yes. I had no idea that one word would change everything. The factory was old, really old. From the outside, it looked like any other abandoned building. Tall, worn down, with broken windows and rusty metal. But as soon as I stepped inside, I felt something different, something wrong. The air was stale, like the place hadn't been opened in years. The silence was heavy, like the whole building was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. A man, Mr. Lyle, was waiting for me in the lobby. He was short, with a tired face and eyes that never quite met mine. "Welcome," he said, his voice low. "Just a few things to go over before you start. We're a small operation, as you can see." He gestured around the dark, empty halls. "Your job's simple. Stay in the control room, check the cameras every 20 minutes, and do a sweep of the main floor every hour. That's it." He handed me a key and an old, yellowed sheet of paper. "These are your guidelines," he said, hesitating. The paper was filled with rules, not the kind you'd expect for a factory job. They were strange, almost ridiculous. Rule 1. If you hear a bell ringing from the far side of the factory, do not investigate. Rule 2. If you see lights flickering in Section 3, turn off the cameras and wait until they stop. Rule 3. If you hear footsteps behind you, do not turn around. I looked up at Mr. Lyle, half expecting him to laugh, to say it was all some weird joke. But he just looked at me, deadly serious. "Follow these, or you'll end up like the last guy," he said. And without another word, he turned and left. The control room was a cramped space at the back of the building, filled with old monitors showing live feeds from various parts of the factory. The cameras were grainy, black and white, and flickered every now and then, but they covered all the main areas. It felt safe, in a strange way, like this small room was a bubble of normalcy in an otherwise unsettling place. I sat down and checked the cameras, one by one. Nothing but empty rooms, old machines, and shadowy hallways. At first, everything was fine. Just an ordinary night, as expected. But around 1 a.m., something changed. The first sign was a faint, metallic ringing echoing from somewhere deep in the building. A bell? It sounded like it came from Section 5, farthest from the control room. I immediately remembered Rule 1. Do not investigate. I wasn't about to break the rules on my first night, so I stayed put, focusing on the monitors. But the sound grew louder, closer, until it felt like it was right outside the door. And then, it stopped, as suddenly as it had started. About an hour later, as I was beginning to relax, I noticed something strange on the monitors. The lights in Section 3 started to flicker, slowly at first, then faster and faster until it looked like someone was flipping a switch, back and forth. Rule 2. Turn off the cameras and wait. I hesitated. Turning off the cameras went against everything I knew about security work. But I remembered the way Mr. Lyle looked when he handed me that list. So, I turned the monitor off, closed my eyes, and waited. After what felt like an eternity, I turned the monitor back on. The lights had stopped flickering, and everything seemed normal again. I let out a breath, trying to convince myself that it was just some old wiring issue. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Then came the footsteps. I was on my way to do the hourly sweep when I heard them, heavy and slow, echoing from somewhere behind me. I froze, my heart pounding. The footsteps continued, getting louder, closer. Rule 3. Do not turn around. I forced myself to keep walking, my hands shaking. The footsteps were right behind me now, almost close enough to feel. I quickened my pace, almost breaking into a run. Then, just as suddenly as they'd started, the footsteps stopped. I was alone again, but I didn't feel safe. I returned to the control room, too shaken to continue the sweep. I checked the cameras, hoping for some sense of normalcy. But what I saw on the screen chilled me to the core. In Section 3, where the lights had flickered earlier, there was a shadow, a tall, thin figure, barely visible, but there. It was standing perfectly still, facing the camera, almost as if it was looking right at me. I blinked, and it was gone. The hours passed in a blur of silence and dread. Every noise felt like a warning, every shadow like a threat. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that something was lurking just out of sight, waiting. Finally, around 5:30 a.m., I heard it again. The bell, louder this time, and accompanied by a faint, whispering voice. I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded desperate, pleading. The voice grew louder, filling the room until it felt like it was inside my head. I covered my ears, trying to block it out, but the voice kept growing, filling every corner of the factory. I remembered the list, the rules, but none of them covered this. All I could do was sit there, paralyzed by fear, waiting for the voice to stop. And then, as quickly as it had begun, it was gone. The sun started to rise soon after, and the factory began to feel like any other old building, quiet, empty, harmless. But I knew better. I'd survived the night, but I'd barely made it through. And as I left the factory, the list still crumpled in my pocket. I realized that the job wasn't just about keeping the place secure. It was about keeping whatever was inside from getting out. So, would you take a job like this? What would you do if you found yourself facing rules like those? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more twisted tales if you dare.